Okay, so can anybody hear me? Okay, great. People can hear me. Awesome. So, welcome to the first Pathfinder diecast from D6Damage. What I think we're going to do is we're going to answer some of your Pathfinder questions. So, if anybody has anything they want to know Pathfinder related, just post it in chat and we'll see if we can figure it out. Let's see. Grandcaster JJ87, quick question. Yes, what's the question? Yeah, you're right about that. Well, anyway, while we're waiting on that, I guess I'll talk about some of the Pathfinder stuff I've been working on. So I was looking into the possibility of doing a 2-weapon fighting investigator. Hang on. Concealment. Concealment is a little bit dicey because there's cover and there's concealment, and we tend to mix those up, I think, as a lot of people do. Let's see if we can find the exact ruling on it. Logging into PFSRD, and it's not the most user-friendly site in the world, but let's see. Concealment. There we go. Now, how we generally do it is we treat concealment as giving a mischance. But we may have mixed that up with cover. No, cover is a +4 bonus to AC. Yes, concealment and mischance. Concealment gives a subject a successful 20 on a successful attack. The target gets a 20% mischance. And I believe that is... There's a difference between concealment and full concealment also. Okay, yeah. Total concealment is what I was thinking of. So, total concealment is a 50% mischance, and Concealment is a 20% miss chance. Things like Heavy Fog, kind of as the fog spell, give total concealment at a certain distance and partial concealment, like in melee range. So that's generally how we do it when we can figure out what the hell we're doing. All right. Okay, so Grand Jester, I'm going to run a Pathfinder adventure tomorrow. Would it be out of bounds to base it on Magic the Gathering and base locations on the planes of Magic the Gathering? So if you want to do that, I really recommend 5th edition. 5th edition they came out recently with the Ravnica Guildmaster book, which is, you know, you're buying a full book, but you get a lot of really cool Magic the Gathering themed stuff for your 5e game. And they also have these awesome things called plane shifts, which are these little free downloadable booklets that have how to convert stuff from Magic the Gathering, the various planes, obviously, into stuff for a 5e game. I recommend the Innistrad one. I think that's really cool. They have a lot of just great background stuff. Now, if you wanted to get that into Pathfinder, you can do that, but it takes a little imagination, and the plane shifts and the Guildmaster's Guide can serve as kind of a reference for you. So, the next question, how do I think a magic-heavy campaign where all the players are spellcasters will work in Pathfinder? All right, this is one I've actually given a lot of thought to, as I have I like spellcasters and I like spellcasting parties. I think it can work, but you have to get a number of characters that fill those other combat roles, like, if you want to stretch the definition of caster, if you want to count like a paladin as a caster or a blood rager as a caster, I think you can do fine. If you want like 5 wizards on an adventure, I mean, you can try it. I sure hope someone, preferably several someones, have summoned monsters so you can have at least a few body blockers. You're going to sure blow stuff up. But yeah, I like the idea of a full caster party. I think it can work, but you do have to remember that someone has to be on the front line taking the hits for the back kind of row people. Can you recommend a kineticist build? Well, so I haven't actually read up on a lot of kineticist builds, but I'd imagine they're out there. So, like I said in my video, there are definitely some things you should consider when building your kineticist. Think about things like constitution score and how you're going to manage burn, and whether or not you want to be daring with the blast type you pick, going with the heavier damage one, or go that runs off regular AC, or the one that runs off touch for less damage with elemental flavor. But for specific builds, unfortunately, no. Let's see. Next question. I'm asking because my group had basically been playing... Okay, that was related to the cover question. Let's see. Next. It's buffering. Left a little. Okay. I think the wizard archetype Spell Scroll Master is really cool in theory, but I can't figure out how to make it actually work. What would you recommend to make this work at 1/2 melee? Okay, well, let's look this thing up. Wizard type Scroll Master. Okay, let's see. Scroll Blade. A Scroll Master can wield any paper, parchment, or cloth as if it was a melee weapon. In the hands of a wizard, the scroll acts as a sort of sword with an enhancement bonus equal to 1/2 the wizard's level. It's kind of cool. With only the... Okay, so... First off with this, I would say the enhancement bonus is nice, and things like weapon focus are also nice. Okay, so what you might want to do with this archetype, and this is something you can just think about, is take one level in Scroll Master and the rest in Magus. So that way you can do the Scroll Blade. So that way you can do the Scroll Blade, and you can still have a decent base attack bonus. And if you take the one Arcana that allows you to... Actually, I don't know if you would need the Arcana that allows you to use spells from other schools with your Spell Strike. Because you could have the Paper Blade, or have it be like a scarf or something that you're wearing, and then you then make it into a sword, which would be pretty cool. And then do things like the Spell Strikes and all that good stuff. See, Scroll Shield, Scroll Master. Yeah, it seems like the best stuff you're going to get out of Scroll Master is going to happen at first level. So... yeah, I think if you want to be effective and have like a really unique character, one level in Scroll Master and the rest in Magus would be a way you could do it. Let's see, what would your example of good PC synergy be? So are we talking about the all-caster party or just synergy between player characters? Okay, here's an interesting one. What do I think is the most damaging class combo? Well, I think there have been a number of really powerful ones. And we also have to think about how kind of magic weapons sort of change that. But barbarians can get really ridiculous amounts of damage there. In a current campaign that I'm running, we have a barbarian with... he's actually a Viking, and he has a magic item that allows him to, when he rages, turn into a bear. So he turns into a bear, which... so he rages, and he gets the rage bonuses. He turns into a bear, which gives him the bonuses for the transformation. And he just does massive... he's got massive hitting power. He really does. And he can tank decently, too. Then we've got the original summoner with the Eidolon suit, the Synthesis Summoner. Those can also get pretty ridiculous just because you have so many options. If you want to go with elemental damage, things like Sorcerer, especially when you can do things like manipulating your caster level to bump it up over what it would normally be with certain feats that allow you to cast as like 3 or 4 levels over what you actually are, you can stay very competitive by just getting damage out there against creatures. You do have to be comfortable with the fact that it's elemental flavored. So there's a definite possibility of negation based on what you're fighting. Paladin is also, against specific things, Paladins can do absolutely great damage. And just never underestimate the ability of a fighter with an appropriate magic weapon to just get out lots and lots of damage, because they can get those multiple attacks, and because of the base attack bonus and enhancement bonuses and other things like class features, they have a really decent chance of hitting even against decent AC creatures. Okay, so synergy between player characters. Well, so first off, there's personalities, and that's just kind of how your players work together. And that's on an individual basis. But I think if we're looking at classes, which is possibly the intent of the question, I think that there is definitely there's a reason why the archetypal D&D party is wizard, fighter, cleric, and rogue. Those pretty much cover all of the tactical scenarios you're going to run into. So you've got an ability to buff and heal. You've got an ability to have utility and magical damage. You've got a tank out front. And you've got a striker that can be very maneuverable, get past certain barriers, and do massive amounts of flanking damage. So that square is, that 4-quadrant party is very powerful. But I think in terms of other combinations, I think that to continue on with kind of the caster theme, a magus and a wizard in the same party is very exciting because they can share spells with each other, and you've got an ability to cover a lot of bases with them. Let's see, what are some other good ones? Obviously, a tank and a DPS are going to potentially have a lot of synergy, especially if the tank is somehow immune to what the DPS is doing. So things like Blood Ragers with the blood fortification thing that prevents them from taking damage, where they can just run into an area, and if they've got like fire resistance on top of that, you can have them like run in, and a DPS like Wizard just fireball the area while the Blood Rager ties up the opponents and just get out a huge amount of damage that way, and the Blood Rager's fine afterward. Let's see. Another question. We are playing the Pathfinder Venture, Curse of the Crimson Throne, and we are 3 players, Rogue, Druid, and Cleric. Do you think we can complete it? Well, okay, so your party makeup is the beginning of the question, but it's not the end of the question. So you've got things to consider like, how did you pick your stats? Because if you went with the official Pathfinder point buy, you're about where Pathfinder wants you. If you rolled for your stats are most likely going to be higher over where you want them to, where the game wants them to be. So if you've rolled for it, you have the chance to get some really powerful characters and be able to just kind of sweep encounters aside without too much of a problem. You also have the player dynamics to consider. So how well do you work as a team? Because you can have the ideally balanced party. You can have every circumstance theoretically covered by one of the players. And if you can't work together, that theoretical ability to function is going to fall apart on you real quick. Because if you've got someone who's running ahead, well, they're no good to the party now, are they? If you've got someone who... If you've got one of those Blue Falcon mages who's just dropping area of effect spells on the party with other people in combat and not trying to maneuver around you, well, you know, there goes your survivability real quick. So if your party isn't your enemy, and if you have decent stats, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to complete the module. Of course, barring any of those unfortunate circumstances that happen, where you're going to be in a circumstance where you're going to get mauled by a dire tiger and he's just going to do massive damage and out kill someone in one turn. Or, you know, you walk into a trap and you just have massive damage and someone dies. Those are just the kind of things that happen. You know, act of the gods, if you will. Next question. What is your opinion on the War Priest class? I both love and hate it because it's simply a better version of the Paladin. I'm going to have to disagree with you on that. I think that the Paladin is more restrictive and more specialized, but in the field that the Paladin is in, I think that the Paladin is one of the best classes in the game. So things like the Divine Health, where you get, you know, the bonus to your saves is really good. Smite is just a fantastic ability. That bonus damage against certain creature types, undead, evil dragons, and evil outsiders. Those are the kind of things where you want the damage bonuses out there, because those things will mess you up real quick. And obviously I'm not saying, so, hey, waste your smite on like a zombie or something. Don't do that. But for things like vampires and liches and all the devourers, those can also be really bad. So, but to be fair to the War Priest is a very good class. It has a lot of bonuses. It takes the restriction and it takes the frustration out of the Paladin, because honestly, Paladins can be frustrating. Your alignment locked to lawful good, which is hard. Your best abilities only function against certain things, which can be hard. Oh, we're going into battle with an army of lawful neutral mercenaries who are statted to completely screw us up. Boy, I sure wish some of these guys were evil, but they're not technically evil. Damn it. I am lawful good. So that can mess you up. The War Priest doesn't have that problem. You also have flexibility in terms of the War Priest that you build, and you can make some great stuff. Especially with the different gods, and I like how building a War Priest with a different god, they feel completely different. Like a War Priest of Caden Kalen can have almost like a swashbuckler vibe, while a War Priest of like Abadar, you can be like all Judge Dredd, you know, I am the law. So I like that, where Paladins feel pigeonholed. And that's another unfortunate thing, but it's a good pigeonhole to be pigeonholed in. Let's see. Next up, speaking of rogue strikers, but the team isn't being tactical, is the only is fighting the only real option if flanking is rare or non-existent. Okay, so with a rogue, the ability to get those feints in, you've got surprise. That might be your only other option, and in which case you're also relying on your party to do things for you, like be quiet, so you can sneak up on someone and get the feint attack. And yeah, that's too bad. I'm sorry, but if the party isn't willing to help you out in terms of giving you flanking, then feinting is your best option as a rogue. Also, ranged sneak attack is just way too hard in Pathfinder. It shouldn't be that way. I wish they had come up with a good solution for it, but unfortunately they didn't. Let's see. What do I think is better, Slayer or Sniper Rogue archetype? I really wish I could give you an answer from a place of knowledge on this one. But unfortunately, I have not had an extensive amount of experience playing rogues, and my experience with ranged sneak attack, as I kind of just mentioned, is the fact that it doesn't work. But I've heard that the Slayer can work. It's kind of an issue of, are you willing to take the time to make your abilities function? So I think we're talking about things like the observation. Let me just pull up Slayer real quick and not be talking completely out of my you-know-what. Okay, yeah, so with the Slayer, it's going to be about, are you willing to use the study target ability? And I think if you are, I think it would be better than the Sniper Rogue. Is it possible to revive a character? So this is someone who's died, I'm guessing, is the question. And how do we get them back? Because you can do that. Spells like Resurrection exist. You know, you have to deal with the negative level, I think, that you get out of that. But yes, you can totally revive people, even if they've died. Even if they've died horribly. Creativity also kind of comes into that. Like, if you've got a character who's like an alchemist or something, you could ask your DM, hey, can I bring this guy back as like a construct or a zombie or something? You know, hey, necromancy, skeleton champions, if you're high enough level. I'm not saying that the paladin wanted to be a skeleton champion, but if he were here, and in a few minutes he will be here once we get the gems we need in order to perform this ceremony, he'll agree with us. What's this? Isn't that the question we're all asking? Alright, Curse with Crimson Throne is very skill-based and more subterfuge and investigative in nature, making them... Okay, so yeah, the content of Curse of the Crimson Throne is definitely something to think about. If your party's not kind of built for it, and that's always a possibility, then you're going to be in trouble. Like going into something like the Tomb of Horrors without someone who can deal with traps, not a good idea. What's my opinion on the shifter base class? Do I think the lack of playtesting limited its final form? Yeah, lack of proper playtesting is something that can get... That's just like a game development problem. If you don't playtest something well enough, then you're going to be in trouble. It's not going to be as good as it should be. But beyond that, it's a neat idea. They have some cool archetypes for the shifter. I kind of wish that all of the options that you have in Pathfinder for the shifter were good options. Like, I'd like to see a snake shifter be more viable, but it's not really that great because you're mainly doing like grabs and constricts and you're not necessarily getting out the damage. You could conceivably do a decent control snake shifter, but isn't that also kind of a general problem that Pathfinder has? I can, but why would I want to? But anyway, to go back to the shifter, there are some cool options there. That's one that I also haven't looked extensively at. I know of it. I've seen some of the cool archetypes, like the Elemental Shifter. Seems neat. So definite possibilities. Unfortunately, because it did come out so near the end of the original Pathfinder's run, yeah, I can see that being detrimental to the final product. Let's see. Next up, I feel people restrain themselves too much with paladins. I feel they can be rather expressive. You just have to understand what lawful good is for your character and your god. That is an excellent point. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Obviously, there's a quadrant of deities that can have a paladin, and a paladin of Abadar, the god of like the neutral, the lawful neutral deity of like cities and commerce, is going to be a very different type of paladin. I used the Judge Dredd example before, and it bears true for Abadar. Is going to be a very different paladin than, say, a paladin of Shaylin, the goddess of like art and love and music, where you're going to get conceivably someone much more kind of touchy-feely, a little more hands-off, not as necessarily rule-bound or combat-intensive. It is important to define what is lawful good, and that's something you want to work with on your DM. Like, how do I live by these tenets? What does that mean for you? You can just go out and ask your DM, in what circumstance, what would I do for you to take away my paladin levels? What would I have to do? Let's see. Hey D6, it's Doom. Remind me to tell you the story of how killing another character would have saved his life someday. Okay? Yeah, color me interested. That sounds like an interesting story. Let's see. What are the changes you dislike? Pathfinder 2.0 playtest. Decided to take. Okay, so the playtest. Yeah, that's there's some issues there. I like playing casters a lot, and I don't like that casters feel underpowered. I think that the scaling contrips is a good idea, but I think that underpowering everything else, bumping up 25% of your spell list and making 75% of it not as good, I'm not fond of that. I think that the action economy is kind of wonky. I really dislike that a really scaled chance of missing. I think it's like a -10 for your second attack. So your first attack, full base attack bonus, -10 second attack, and something like ridiculous if you choose to make a third attack. It's like, how are you supposed to hit with more than one attack per turn? And how does that scale? I mean, the idea of having 3 attacks at level 1, it's like, yeah, totally awesome. But once you get to like level 15 and above, it's like 1 attack. What the hell? So that's another thing that concerns me about the playtest. The test module, Doomsday's Dawn, was not that good. And it could have been better written. I think they made a mistake by trying to make people play 3 different characters, because people, at least my party, was approaching it like a traditional D&D campaign where we get attached to the characters and we want to play them and we put this time and effort into the backstory, and it's like, we'll make a new character. We'll make a new character. We'll make a new character. And what the hell, guys? We just barely got into trying our first characters. The next question is, what are my thoughts on Pathfinder 2.0? And, well, I need to see more. And that's just kind of the end of it. I need to see what the final form is going to be. The playtest is not that impressive, but then it is a playtest. We need to be fair to them, and we need to give them a chance to come out with a good product. I think that if it were my choice, I would not have pursued Pathfinder 2. If I were the king of Paizo, I would have said, okay, people come to Pathfinder for a reason. It's because they want 3.5 D&D, but they want the more refined and the more option-focused version of it that we give them. And we're just basically going to keep supporting this thing and keep putting out like new modules, new ideas. And we're going to really build into Starfinder, and we're going to define that world and define that system. Because Starfinder, I think that was the place to break out. That was the place to try things that are different. And that was the place to define the Paizo method. Because they have things like the leveling up system and the character creation system in Starfinder is not a bad idea. I like taking the randomness of just rolling dice kind of out of the character creation. And sci-fi is inherently not as defined as the Tolkienian fantasy that most D&D is sort of set in, so you can do anything you want. You can have the races you want, and they can be your races, and you can define them how you want, and you can give people incentive to play as these things because they're really cool. So that's what I would have done if it were my choice, but let's see. What do I think of Magus versus Eldritch Knight? I think both have their place, but I prefer Eldritch for the complete spell list and a bit more things to work with. Okay, so I'm going to disagree with you here. I don't really like the Eldritch Knight very much. I think that it was a cool idea that eventually evolved into the Magus. I think that there are possible uses for the Eldritch Knight. Certain wizard builds might work well with it. But that being said, I think that it's got too many problems to really be worth multi-classing into, or prestige classing rather, into for most wizards. When you're the stuff you're getting as a wizard anyway at the kind of levels you're going to be getting, Eldritch Knight is really good. So I think for the more complete sword and spell guy, experience, I think Magus is better. So what are your thoughts on illusion spells like Silent Image, Mirror Image, Major Image? Do you feel that they are viable only in social encounters and not in combat? Okay, I have one word for you with all of those spells: imagination. And so if you are the kind of person who can come up with a good use for those spells, like, oh, there's a group of goblins over there, I'll make an illusion of a red dragon and I'll have it scare them. And, you know, that is a way to use it in combat or right before combat. And if you have a DM who's willing to let you get away with it and is willing to work with you on that, I think it can absolutely be viable. But that's one where it's really important that you're on the same page with your DM and you both know what you're doing and what you want to accomplish. Next question. I am starting a melee summoner. What do you suggest? Teamwork feats. If you're going into melee, the summoner is nice because you actually can stand up in melee. You've got the mid-range base attack bonus. You can hit with a weapon. So I think thinking of your Eidolon as like a partner for your melee combat experience is a great idea. I actually kind of touched on this with my Teamwork Summoner build video. Your Eidolon is a great companion for you to have. And if you want to work together in melee, because you can both have... The Eidolon is essentially a second character, and it works kind of like an animal companion, and you can have it do things like give you the bonus from... the improved bonus from flanking if you both have the teamwork feat, or you can have it do things like trip, or aid another action. If your Eidolon hits harder than you do, you could be the one doing the aid another action. I think that you have a lot of great options working with your Eidolon, having it be like a second character for you. Let's see. I did a Shaylin Paladin. I love her. She was a warrior of light archetype. It's good for beginners to the class. All right. See, what do you think they did to Major, Minor, Silent Spell in Pathfinder 2? I have not looked at it. I played as a level 1 wizard for one session in Pathfinder 2, and I didn't get a chance to look extensively at the spell list, because after that we were all kind of decided that eventually we were going to be shifting back to the original Pathfinder, so I'm sorry I can't give you a very clear answer on that. What are my thoughts on the medium class? I haven't played one yet, but seems so flexible that most of it is like a one-man band class. Yeah, that's a neat thing about the medium, is the fact that it is flexible. It can do a lot of things. My concern about the medium is that you can do a lot of stuff, the Bard problem, essentially, where you can do a lot of stuff, but you're not good at any of it. You know, I can do all this cool stuff, but I suck at it. That's my concern for it. I think that there is conceivably a way to build your medium. How I would do it, based on my initial readings of the medium class, is... readings. Based on my initial reading of the medium class, is that I would specialize. I would pick like one archetypal spirit to go with, and kind of stick with that, with the possibility of changing every once in a while, kind of as needed, but mainly sticking with one core idea. But I think from an RP standpoint is where the medium really shines. There are a lot of awesome things that you can do, like working with your DM to have them come up with a list of spirits that could possess your character. I like the idea of the ritual with the other players where they get benefits too. I really like the Commissar-esque Capitan spirit that you have to be in charge of the party and you give them bonuses. I think that's all really cool stuff. I think the medium can be a lot of fun if you're willing to give it a chance. What is the biggest danger for a Knife Master rogue? If I remember, not even going to bother remembering. I'm just going to look it up. Okay, so the biggest danger I think a Knife Master rogue is going to run into, you get some great stuff, like having a knife, having the additional sneak attack die, or not the additional sneak attack die, the larger sneak attack die. I think that's really cool. You're essentially trading out something that isn't really that big a deal. Having a smaller damage die on your primary hit for more sneak attack damage, that's great. But certain things will screw you. Like not having flanking, not being able to pull off the feints, and creatures that can't be crit. So as a Knife Master, and being a Knife Master is going to make those problems worse, unfortunately. You're going to walk into a room and there's going to be a gelatinous cube and you're not going to be able to do a damn thing to it. Because it's like, oh, I can stab it with my D4. Oh no, it's eaten me. Oh, who could have foreseen this horrible circumstance? And the Knife Master will make the rogue problems that you have with certain creature types worse. But I suppose, since you're not going to be getting your sneak attack die anyway, you could always just carry around something like a big club or a Morning Star and just be like, oh, well, it's not going to work anyway. May as well hit it. But in addition to that, circumstances where you can't get flanking for one reason or another, or you don't get your sneak attack, again, for one reason or another, you can conceivably gimp yourself in combat. It's a high-risk, high-reward archetype, which is really cool when it works, and very, very not cool when it doesn't work. Let's see. Have I ever played in a no magic campaign in Pathfinder? Do I think no magic has no verification? Okay, so I wouldn't really necessarily want to play in a no magic setting. I mean, I live in the real world, the ultimate no magic setting. But that being said, I think that a lot of it would depend on the story. I mean, there are certain martial classes I'd want to try, like Barbarian is one of the ones that seems pretty cool. I'd like to maybe do one of those. But I haven't played in a no magic setting. I think that it's as valid type of setting as the DM wants to make it. It's all about the story. I think if what they're doing is reliant on there being no magic, that's conceivably a good story. I think it changes things a lot. It makes for a lot more grounded experience, which may be what they're going for. If you wanted to make something kind of like Lord of the Rings, where magic is really rare and only certain characters get to do it, and you want to make them super special, that is a way to do it. A lot of it depends on the individual campaign, so I don't think it's inherently less valid. Let's see. What is my favorite monster both to fight and to throw at the party? I've heard that my taste in monsters is eclectic, and I like some interesting creature types. God, there are just so many. Aberrations are really cool. I like how weird and bizarre and alien and therefore frightening they can be. Will-o-wisps are really cool, just with their backstory and the fact that they're malignant, intelligent, and very alien. I think that makes them very cool. Aboleth are also really cool if you want some if you want just a dash of off-brand Cthulhu in your campaign, Aboleth can work for that. You get a lot of fun, gross-out stuff. Monstrous humanoids are neat because they are, again, you can get the uncanniness rather than the pure alienness of the aberration. Uncanny is another way to do that if you want to be kind of David Lynchian with your approach to putting horror or suspense in your campaign. Monstrous humanoids where they look human-ish and they act human-ish. That's cool. To kind of go the other direction into pretty things that are dangerous are the Fae, or occasionally not so pretty if we're talking about like Red Caps and the Knuckle of He. I like their beguiling, entrancing abilities. Certain vampires can also be like that, where they are beautiful and alluring and also deadly. I think that's pretty cool. Let's see, are there any other I don't use dragons that often. I think I'm stuck in the mindset where dragons have to be big and impressive and almost these divine-ish monstrosities, and I don't use them that often because I just got, unfortunately, and this is my failure as a storyteller, I got stuck in the mindset of Smaug from The Hobbit really defines what a dragon is for me so much that I don't want to break out of that. And that's not right of me, but there it is. Undead. Undead are also really great just because you get so much variety out of them. You can have unintelligent skeletons and zombies. You can have feral, cunning ghouls. You can have the whole cool ghoul civilization that Pathfinder talks about in their character. You have liches. You have so many great options with undead. Undead are fantastic. What do I like to fight? I like to fight stuff that my abilities work against. I tend to play things that are demicasters. We've got the first 6 spell levels. Those are things like Investigator, Alchemist. I am playing an occultist in the current campaign that we're going into. And I like stuff that my tricks are going to work against. So I tend to like fighting things like humanoids and monstrous humanoids and things that I can affect. Next question. I've looked into both the Investigator class, and I was wondering if you thought they would be suitable for combat, not optimal but workable. I don't want to weigh my party down in combat. I think the Investigator is a fantastic combat class. I think that it works on similar principles to the Rogue, and if you work it right, you can be a huge asset to your party. Your ability to buff yourself with the Alchemist concoctions is great. My Elf Investigator video was the Investigator that I played, and it worked really well. I was not disappointed at all. I think that you can... I think if you want to do a ranged Investigator, there's a feat that allows you to apply your focus damage to range targets. You have a lot of options with the Investigator. I highly recommend it. Let's see. What is my opinion on vision-based strategies, like using darkness in combination with glitter dust? For me, I like the Ifrit rays that allows you to see through smoke. That's one where you're going to want to consult your DM if it's the kind of thing that can work, like if you're not fighting things that don't rely on vision. I think that against humanoids and anything that relies on sight, it's conceivably really good. There are a couple of circumstances where it can mess you up, but if you want to make it part of your fighting style, I think that it's going to work on enough things that it's going to be able to carry you through the campaign. Am I familiar with the Enchanting Courtesan Prestige class? What are your thoughts on it? Give me 1 second. Let's see. That sounds like a bard. Oh, no, it's a prestige class. Let's see. Enchanting Courtesans. Okay, so interesting. Poison use. Okay, so my first thought, it is a very provocative prestige class. And I think that if you're going to play an Enchanting Courtesan, you have to be prepared. You have to... This isn't one to bust out with people that you haven't played D&D with before. And it's the kind of thing that you're going to want to make sure that your party is on the same page with you about. Because I can see how you would have fun if you are playing this. You don't have any reason not to just go all into it. Like, okay, I am an Enchanting Courtesan. I have taken the courtesan as my profession. If I'm playing an evil version of this, I want to become a succubus by doing the demonic transformation ritual. I think that if you're going to do it all the way. And if you're not going to do it, if you're not going to go all the way with it, don't do it. It's provocative, and it's conceivably very fun, and it's enchantment focused, so you run the possibility of running into things where it's just not going to work for you. If you'll indulge me this 40k analogy, you're a demonette of Slaanesh. What are you going to do when you try and seduce an orc? Think about it. Let's see. What was your first Pathfinder character? My first Pathfinder character was Tiny the Half-Orc Cleric. This was in the very first Pathfinder game that I played with a group that I got into because it was one of those groups where you meet at a gaming shop, they advertise online for it, and it's, hey, learn to play D&D. I went there, I made this character that I said, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to make something that sounds funny and fun to play. So, Half-Orc Cleric. I don't know that I actually achieved anything or healed anyone. I didn't even know how feats worked at that point. So, not a truly successful character. The first one that I played with my group was in a campaign DM'd by D10, and I played a Bard Sorcerer multiclass, because at that point in my Pathfinder career, I was like, oh, OMG, multiclassing, best thing ever. And I've come to see that both multiclassing and sticking with one class are both ways to make good characters. But that character was fun because I had very high enchantment DCs, so I could just stun things and confuse things, and fun character. See, my group has expressed interest in the downtime and building rules in Ultimate Campaign, but I have been having trouble wrapping my head around them. Is it just me, or are the rules weird? They're different. I think that most people, when they approach D&D, you're thinking from a very party mindset, where we're a group of adventurers. We run around, we stab goblins, we take loot, and we go back to town, and we let the townies worry about everything else. I think if you want to play Settlers of Catan in Pathfinder, the Ultimate Campaign building rules are great. I think that if you want to put the time and effort into learning them, then they can be fantastic. But that's time and effort that you may not want to dump into your campaign. So I'm going to use the So if you want to play a really adventure-heavy campaign, these may not be rules you want to worry about. If you want to do things sporadically, like every once in a while there's an orc raid, or every once in a while you get attacked by a dragon, then heavy implementing of these rules is a good idea. Don't go halfway with it, is sort of my thoughts. What do I think is the weakest hybrid class from a mechanical standpoint? Well, I haven't looked at all of them, so I can't give you like a really definitive answer. I think Arcanist isn't as good as I want it to be. I think you run into circumstances that make the character hard to play and hard to build. I think Shaman is mechanically annoying because its abilities will blend together. Because you don't get locked into having a spirit. It's like, oh, I pick a spirit and then I just pick another spirit. You know, you're not locked into things, so you're going to end up being You know, you're whatever you need to be, and you're not you. And I think from a mechanical standpoint, that bothers me. When you seduce an orc, you mind the tusks, obviously. Very true. What are my thoughts on creating a hybrid class? Creating a hybrid class. Hybrid classing versus multi-classing, I guess, is the question. I think that the hybrid classes are easier to do than multi-classing. I think that if you want to play something that is... It's Paizo doing the job for you, basically. And I think that in certain ways, it's better than multi-classing. But it's certainly easier. But I think that if there is something specific you want... I think that multi-classing is definitely the way to go. Like, if you only want one thing, if you only want, say, a first-level class ability from this class to make your character better, then I think multi-classing is the way to go. It's situational. I hate to give that answer, but it is situational. For most players, I think... the hybrid classes are the way to go if you want a little of this and a little of that. But if you know what you want and you know what you're trying to do, I think multi-classing is better. Let's see. I have been working on a Boreal Sorcerer. I'm going with the spell list of defensive magic and DC based on cold spells. Then using weapons with the defensive quality. Let me look up what the defensive quality does real quick. So I like to be sure about these things. I guess I don't entirely see what you're going for there, but I remember my first Pathfinder character. I played a rogue, and in my first round of combat, a goblin knocked me unconscious. I'm sorry about that. With one shot. Oh, yeah, that is a first Pathfinder experience kind of thing to happen. I'm glad you appreciate my 40k analogy. What is the next class analysis vid? I have not decided yet. I was actually thinking about doing something like an item guide. There was a request a while back about doing a stave guide, and that's a topic which it might be a good idea to cover. I haven't really talked about staves that much, and they're very powerful. And if you can get your hands on them, good on you. So that might be the next video. But for the next class analysis, I was thinking about medium because I had looked at it. Psychic, the last video I did, Psychic, it was between Psychic and medium, and I went with Psychic because it was a little more approachable. But medium possibly, or I might try one of the hybrid classes that I haven't gotten to. I kind of want to finish out the occult stuff because that's been something that I think was well worth exploring. Have I ever run or played in a Mythic campaign? Yes, I actually have. This was D10's second campaign, and we were given Mythic tiers. It was an ambitious campaign, and I think we were all a little unsure of ourselves. We didn't know entirely what we were going to do. I think the Mythic tier I went with, this was when I was playing my Elf Investigator, I think it was Trickster or something, and I had a lot of fun with it. I got a great ability that when I got hit, it allowed me to replace, to create an illusionary doppelganger of myself and teleport 30 feet away. So I thought that was really cool, and I had a lot of fun with it. The Mythic campaigns are conceivably hard. They are hard on you as a DM because the player characters are very powerful. But for certain creatures in the bestiary, outer gods, some truly monstrous stuff, I think Mythic tiers are necessary, or something that it would be a really good idea for the characters to have if you want them to have any chance of success. Oh, blocking. Okay, well, let's start by looking at that Boreal Bloodline again. But I will leave blocking open. Okay, so your first ability, and because it's your first ability, you're going to have it from level 1, and it's going to be the one you're going to use most. You can touch a weapon or 50 pieces of ammunition as a standard action. Give it the Frost property. see exactly what that does. So 1d6 points of cold damage on a successful hit. This one. Gain resistance 5. Okay, so my recommendation on a Boreal Sorcerer is to go with more of a support type character. Some of your abilities, and like the ability to give a weapon frost, that's pretty good, unless you're playing against things that have frost resistance. But if you want to be near another character that you can then enhance their weapon, I think they would definitely really appreciate that. No one is going to say no to an extra d6 of damage. I also think spells like Enlarge Person, that's really good. You're going to get it as a bonus spell. It's your first bonus spell that you get, actually. That's a great way to enhance the party's ability to do damage. Like if you've got something like a Barbarian that you can enlarge, increasing the damage die of the weapon and giving him an additional damage die on top of that. Doesn't even need to be a Barbarian. A Fighter or a Paladin or anyone on the front line that you can help out in that way, I think your character is going to be very much appreciated. So I definitely think that the Boreal Bloodline is a good way to support your party. But if you want to be the star of combat, it's going to be a little bit tougher. All right, next question. Have you ever gotten to play in an evil campaign, or from the perspective of a monster? And I've gotten some offers about that. Like one of my other friends was playing a campaign where you're essentially a group of monsters trying to stop adventurers, and I've had characters play evil. I've had players go evil. I've never done it. Certain people would disagree with you. Some of my characters can come off as a little bit evil, but I don't actually go to the evil alignment. An evil campaign is a little bit dicey. It all, again, depends on your ability as a storyteller. Do you want evil characters? Do you want them to be trying to do evil things? Is that what you're comfortable with? And if you are, if that's the story you want to tell, you can definitely do it. See, playing a Halfling Sleuth Investigator, and if I'm going to go Mythic, I was thinking Trickster also. Yeah, that's definitely recommend. Have I ever used third-party materials, classes, features, items in your Pathfinder games? If so, which ones? I generally do not use third-party material. I think it can be a little bit unbalanced. Every once in a while, we can kind of run into stuff that we don't know it's third-party, but when we do, we kind of don't go with it. I don't use third-party material. Favorite music genre and artists and bands? I am a rock and roll guy. I like rock. I like nu metal. I like heavy metal. I can't actually tell the difference between a lot of the subgenres of metal, with the possible exception of power metal, which goes great with D&D, by the way. I would love to see a D&D movie with Blind Guardian in the soundtrack. Sabaton's really good. In my emo moments, I like Motionless in White, My Chemical Romance, Evanescence. My opinions on music were essentially shaped, it's going to sound super embarrassing, but I'll tell you anyway, were shaped by the soundtrack for the Daredevil movie, the old Daredevil movie. Because That was when movies had fantastic soundtracks, and that soundtrack is just the best. Also, when I'm on the occasions that I'm not in the mood for rock and roll or something sort of intense and angry sounding, I can like religious gospel-y type music. I really like the hymnal type Christmas songs, and I listen to those even when it's not Christmas. O Come All Ye Faithful. Josh Groban is really good for that. And that's kind of where I got the opening music for D6Damage, which is a Gregorian chant. What are the house rules that I use? We don't really have a lot of house rules. Sometimes I can be a little bit dictatorial about what can be crit and what can't be crit. One of my pet peeves is that golems can be crit, and that really shouldn't be. Because when you look at what a golem is, it's a solid block of material. A golem is not a robot, okay? That's like an automaton or a clockwork construct. Even an animated object, I can see it. But for something like a golem, a clay golem is a block of clay animated by supernatural power. An iron golem is essentially an iron statue. It doesn't have joints. It doesn't have organs. It doesn't have bones. It is a block of material, and you can't crit it. But if you want to play with constructs, even though it doesn't make sense, if you want to call them golems and have them be robot-like, then I completely understand being able to critically damage them. That makes sense. But based on the definition that I go from to explain what a golem is to myself, as opposed to like a clockwork automaton again, or a animated object, or some other type of construct, that's why them being not vulnerable to crit damage, that's why I go with that, and that's kind of a house rule of mine. It's not one that I super insist on. Another one that is sort of a house rule is, as a DM, I'm kind of lenient on paladin players and how they choose to portray lawful good. Let me look up. So I have a question about elemental metamagic feats. Let me look that up. Alright, I assume this is elemental spell, metamagic feat we're talking about. Choose one energy type, acid, cold, electricity, or fire. You may replace the spell's normal damage with energy of that type, or split the spell's damage so half of it is the energy type and the other type is normal. It increases by 1 level. Okay, so I think if you're going to get a metamagic rod of elemental spell, it's a great way to change the damage type. If you're going with a character that is inherently really tied to one element, I'm going to use the example, because I played this, of an oracle with the flame mystery where you've got fireballs for days and you want more options, getting a metamagic rod is a good way to do it. Learning that feat is also a decent way to do it, although spontaneous casting with metamagic feat increases the time. So it goes from a standard to, I think, like a full round action. So you got to stay still so you can shoot the different flavored fireball, ice ball, acid ball, whatever ball. But good thing to have. Let's see. I have a really complex God question. It will take a hot minute to quantify. What are your thoughts on in-game relationships including between other party members? In-game relationships from an RP standpoint are what everyone wants, but they're also kind of hard to pull off. So how do your characters work together? And I think a player who can really play someone that they're not is kind of a rarity. I think for those who choose to play evil characters who do things that they wouldn't do in real life, that's, oh, you mean like dating? Well, I think if the two people are really dating, then them playing characters that are dating, that can work fine. If you are playing, it's a challenging RP. I'll say that. It is a challenging RP, especially if, well, it will be a challenging RP for any people who aren't in a relationship. I could see that going really wrong in RP, but I could also see it adding a lot. I think that would be something that's best attempted by experienced players. We are coming up on an hour and a half, so I think we're going to wrap up this stream in just a minute. I'm going to answer the last couple questions. Speaking of house rules, what do you think of druids being unable to wear living steel armor? I hadn't heard that one, but it's metal, I suppose, even though it comes out of trees. Yeah, so I think I would say that's a fair rule, and I wouldn't feel the need to change it. Let's see. Would it be too much to have empowered control winds and create winds? Maybe. That's one hell of a storm, but by the time you get to the level that you can do that, it's going to be near end game anyway. So I think that would be one that's up to the DM. Yeah, it does change the damage type. So you would be, having a burning polar ray. I don't really think that would rename it. You're just changing the damage type. Yes, the spell is still cold damage, but it's fire damage. You are replacing the cold with the fire. And that is how that feat works. All right, so I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much to everyone who is watching. Sorry we got off to kind of a late start because one reason or another, streaming is what it is. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. I'll be sure and do one of these again sometime.